It has been 5 years since a comet hit Earth and exterminated more than 75% of the global population. Fragments of the comet are still in the atmosphere and the air is polluted. Residual radiation persists, and earthquakes and electromagnetic storms have become the norm. Humans have no choice but to continue living in bunkers. John lives with his family in a bunker in Greenland. He works as an engineer but also as a scout, which means he puts on a hazmat suit and occasionally leaves the bunker to check the state of the world. One day he notices that another fissure has opened in the ground and realizes they are getting bigger. So John goes to the beach and discovers a bunch of lifeboats along with a crashed ship. First he checks each boat, but he doesn't find anything useful in any of them. Then he enters the ship through a hole and finds some useful tools that he takes with him. Further inside, he finds the dead bodies of the entire crew. In a drawer, there is a notebook with a beautiful flower that he also takes. At that moment, someone from the bunker warns him over the radio that a storm is coming. John starts running as fast as possible while the electromagnetic storm approaches him from behind at an alarming speed. Fortunately, John manages to jump the gate and enter the bunker just in time to close it again before the storm hits. After the team decontaminates him, John sits in shock as he processes how close he was to death. He decides to see his therapist and shares how the current state of the world makes him feel strange. The therapist explains that everyone is going through trauma and pretending they are not, so he advises John to stop pretending and be more open with his family. Meanwhile, his wife, Allison, is in a meeting with the other bunker leaders who are concerned about resource depletion. While Allison receives a note saying John has returned safely, Dr. Amina shares some information she gathered with scientists from other bunkers about the crater left by the comet. The size and shape of the crater prevent the formation of radioactive storms near it, and its depth prevents the entry of polluted air. This could make it a safe area to live. However, Adam reminds her that the crater is in the south of France and there is a civil war throughout Europe. Suddenly, an earthquake makes the whole bunker shake, but everyone simply waits until it is over and continues with their lives. At the meeting, someone notices that earthquakes have been happening more frequently lately. Amina explains that the tectonic plates are moving again and causing more activity in the area. But a soldier says that if the bunker survived the comet, it can also survive this. Then Allison reminds everyone that they received a distress signal from outside. Adam responds that they do not have the resources to bring in more refugees, not to mention the risk of diseases, so he wants to close the subject. However, Allison reminds him that every decision must be voted on. Hands are raised, and the majority of the group is on Allison's side, so they agree to send a snowmobile tomorrow. Later, while John is busy fixing the pipes in the bunker, his son Nathan is found outside by Allison, who angrily reprimands him and reminds him of how bad John coughs every night as a result of his explorations. During dinner, John gives Allison the flower he found on the ship. Then she makes Nathan confess that he went outside, and John gets angry too, scolding him until Nathan leaves the table. The couple then decides to dance, although Allison gets worried upon hearing John cough again in their bedroom. Nathan uses a flashlight and the holes he made in his bedsheets to make stars appear on his ceiling, pretending he's outside looking at the sky. The next day, John finds some cracks in the walls of the bunker. Meanwhile, the snowmobile goes out and rescues a group of survivors. On the way back, the team calls the bunker to ask for permission for a second trip, as they had to leave people behind because they didn't have enough space for everyone. Adam disapproves immediately, reminding everyone that they do not have enough space or resources. At that moment, another earthquake hits the area and they lose connection with the snowmobile. The bunker is shaken more than usual, causing people and furniture to fall. Suddenly, multiple spots on the ceiling begin to collapse in various rooms, trapping and injuring people. Some debris hits John on the head and the dust makes his cough worse, but a friend comes to help him get out of his quarters. The alarm goes off while the bunker is shaken again, and an explosion can be heard nearby. John runs to the office to rescue Allison, who was also hit by the debris. He helps her up, and together they go look for their son. They find him in his room wearing a mask, but he still has difficulty breathing. John tells the family to pack as much as possible while he goes to look for more masks so they can leave. People are panicking and running all over the bunker, but John still manages to reach the lockers and comes back with some masks. Nathan starts to feel better immediately. Then the family starts to head out. As the tremor continues, the walls are also starting to crumble. A desperate crowd is gathered at the exit, which is only partially open. They will not be able to get out through this door, so John guides his family to the east tunnel. Unfortunately, they discover that the tunnel has collapsed, but since this is the only choice, John makes his family crawl under the rubble. The tremor almost causes the debris to fall on them, but they move fast and manage to cross the tunnel to find the other door. John presses a button to open it, and the powerful motor causes the room to start collapsing faster. The family runs quickly and makes it outside safely. Survivors are running everywhere while the geysers start to spout water. The couple loses sight of Nathan and runs back to find him helping a fallen Amina. The family brings her with them as they run to the beach, where survivors are climbing into boats to try to escape. So many people crowd together that one of the boats ends up tipping on its side, making the crowd fall into the water. Some desperate survivors use the chance to try to steal Adam's mask. Then Allison and John run to help him. A guy jumps on John and manages to steal his mask before he and Allison drag Adam to the shore. There is only one boat left, so John guides his family and some survivors to board quickly. Allison wants to bring as many people as possible, but the pilot points out that too much weight would make the boat sink, so they have no choice but to shut the door in people's faces. The survivors outside cling to the boat until it finally departs. At that moment, a massive wave appears and hits the beach, killing all the survivors who failed to escape. John's boat is also tossed by the wave, but fortunately, the pilot pushes forward and they continue to sail safely. Moments later, John uses a device to confirm the air quality. Then they can take off their masks. The group then discusses where to go, and since Iceland is gone, they agree that their closest destination is England. A few hours later, the boat stops working. John takes a look at the engine and manages to fix it so they can continue. When night falls, Nathan is happy to finally see the stars. A few days later, the boat stops again because it ran out of gas. The group has no choice but to ration their food and let the sea take them somewhere. After a long wait, the boat finally reaches land. The group looks outside and is surprised to discover that they are in Liverpool. John uses his device to confirm that the air is clean and says they should find shelter. But when they look down, they notice that part of the area is flooded. John grabs an oar and begins to paddle until the boat finally hits a dry road. The group gets out of the boat and notices that the city seems abandoned. They see some people on the street, so they follow them until they find a humble settlement where the residents try their best to survive. John notices that many of them look sick, so they will not live for very long out here. John's group hears screams and follows them until they find a crowd protesting outside a bunker protected by armed soldiers. Adam runs to the gate and explains that his people are the governing officers of the Greenland station. Then he requests emergency asylum. The soldiers ask for their badges, but only Allison has hers, so she is the only one authorized to enter. Adam starts arguing with the soldiers while the crowd gets more agitated and a soldier ends up shooting him to kill him. When a random survivor tries to enter, he is also shot. The soldiers close the gate while an alarm begins to ring. At that moment, a storm appears in the sky and the crowd flees in panic. Amina and John's family run to stop a van and ask Obi to take them to London. Obi wants payment, so he lets them into his van after taking John's watch. The vehicle leaves the city at high speed and avoids the storm just in time. Allison hugs Nathan to comfort him while Amina cries for Adam. Obi explains that people are desperate and will kill for food. A few hours later, the van stops in the middle of the forest for a break. Obi smokes a cigarette and shares that he came from Nigeria to England 12 years ago, but he does not regret it. John asks if he knows anything about the state of France, but Obi says that the area is very dangerous and thinks that the crater story is fake. Suddenly, they hear a rumble and discover that several comet fragments are falling from the sky. Everyone runs to hold onto a tree right before the fragments fly above them, destroying the tops of the plants. The resulting wind is very strong, but the group manages to hold on tightly to avoid being blown away. Obi says that his van is all he has and runs to try to get it back. However, the fragments begin to fall to the ground and one of them kills Obi, also destroying the van in the process. Once the shower of fragments ends, Amina and the family gather their bags and all the useful items they can find in the van and continue their journey on foot. Eventually, they arrive in London and knock on the door of a very large building. A hole opens up and Mackenzie points a gun at them, but she immediately lowers it when she sees her old friends and lets them in. Then she shows them around, revealing that this building is a nursing home, so all the survivors living there are elderly. Mackenzie explains that she managed to seal this wing and the generator keeps the air filtration system running. The group manages to relax with food and drinks at dinner. John asks about the crater and Mackenzie says she heard the rumors but doesn't know if they are real. Screams and gunshots can be heard in the streets, and Mackenzie confirms that London is no longer safe. Later, Allison tries to sleep but keeps hearing John coughing in the bathroom. When she looks in the sink, she discovers blood. John tries to claim that it is a normal nosebleed, but Allison does not believe him. Then John reveals that a doctor in the bunker told him that the bleeding is a symptom that means he has 6 to 8 weeks to live. Allison has a breakdown and wants to stay at the nursing home to spend John's final days peacefully as a family. However, John refuses to die there and instead wants to find a new home for his family so he can die in peace. The next day, Mackenzie gives them one of the nursing home's many abandoned cars and a weapon to defend themselves. After she hugs them one last time, Amina and the family leave. A few hours later, while crossing the countryside, John notices that Nathan looks sad and proposes playing travel games. Suddenly, a bullet destroys the car window and hits Amina, killing her instantly. Some men in the bushes keep shooting at them, being careful not to hit the engine because they want to steal the car. John immediately positions himself behind the vehicle and starts shooting back, killing the thieves one by one as they approach. When only one is left, John runs out of bullets, but fortunately, Allison has a second gun and shoots the last man before he can hurt them. After a moment to comfort each other, the family digs a hole and buries Amina. John says some prayers as a final farewell, and Nathan finds it curious because praying sounds like wishing someone well when the person is dead. A few hours later, the family arrives at a large desert area and realizes that it is what remains of the English Channel. At least this means they won't need a boat. As the journey continues, they see many ships and containers on the ground, including an entire Spanish galleon. A few kilometers later, they find the path blocked by a bunch of cars and survivors who are not moving. It turns out that there is a huge abyss between England and France that can only be crossed by walking across a very dangerous rope bridge. Nathan is terrified and says he cannot do it, so John goes first to serve as an encouraging example. The family starts walking on the rope very slowly and carefully. When John coughs, he almost slips but recovers quickly. Suddenly, a very strong wind starts blowing and pushes the bridge, so everyone has to hold on with extra strength to avoid falling. Fortunately, the wind stops quickly and the family can continue moving forward until they reach a rock formation in the middle of the abyss. 2 ladders connect the rock formation to the other side of the abyss. While the family takes a moment to rest, an earthquake hits the area, but fortunately, no one falls. The trio climbs the ladder and begins to crawl. However, they have to stop and hold on tight when the earthquake hits again. Rocks fall from the walls of the abyss and soon the rope bridge breaks, sending several people to their deaths. On the other ladder, a man sees that the bridge no longer exists and turns around, pushing another guy into the abyss in the process. That ladder is starting to slip, so the man jumps and lands on top of Nathan right before the rock formation collapses, causing the second ladder and some people to fall too. The desperate man cannot hold on and also slips to his death, but Nathan grabs the edge of the ladder and his parents help him climb back up, on foot. However, no matter how much they walk, they keep seeing only a wasteland. Suddenly, they hear a gunshot and find Dennis pointing a gun at them. He lowers it when he realizes they are not thieves and offers to take them to his house. Minutes later, the group arrives in northern France. Denny is currently living in an old factory that he powers with a car engine, which in turn is powered by solar panels. He introduces them to his daughter, Camille, and his wife, who is mute and confined to a wheelchair because the radiation affected her nervous system. During dinner, Dennis discovers that John's family is trying to reach the crater and warns them that the area is extremely dangerous. Only 2 cities are left standing, and people are fighting for control of the crater, including the remnants of the French army. Camille takes Nathan to her room and shows him all the cool things Dennis recovered from other buildings. In return, Nathan shows her his worksheet of stars. The next morning, Dennis gives John a map and points out the least dangerous path. He also shares the name of a friend in the army and gives John an old photo so they can prove they know him, which hopefully will bring help. Suddenly, Dennis begins to cry as he asks John to take Camille with them. He wishes he could take her to the crater himself, but he must take care of his wife. John hesitates, but Allison agrees. Afterwards, Camille tearfully says goodbye to her parents and leaves with John's family in Dennis's van. After driving for a few hours, Allison notices that the teenagers are in a bad mood and decides to pull over so they can take a break. John starts a game of Would You Rather, and this improves everyone's mood. Suddenly, some vehicles appear on the road, and a group of soldiers surrounds them. Camille mentions the name of her father's military friend and convinces the soldiers to help them cross the area. At night, the group arrives at a war zone where the army is fighting against insurgents. A soldier guides them behind the lines so they can sneak through the forest without being seen. They have to stop moving entirely when something explodes near them. But then they continue and cross a wire fence to reach an even more dangerous area. Now they have to run as fast as possible to avoid the stray bullets and explosions happening all around them. Soldiers are dying everywhere, and the terrified family even sees a man catch on fire. Their guide calls the bunker to inform them that he has civilians, and his teammates tell him to keep moving while they provide cover. The group continues to advance and finally reaches the trenches, where John almost collapses from coughing. As they walk through the trench, the family has to dodge many bodies and watch more soldiers being shot. Eventually, they reach a ladder and the guide sends them to the forest, telling them to walk straight ahead until they find a camp. In the morning, the group finally finds the military settlement. Camille notices some mountains that were not there before, and John concludes they must be near the crater. When they ask a soldier about Dennis's friend, they discover he is dead. The other soldiers do not want to help them, so John says he is dying and just wants to protect his family. A man pities them and gets them a spot. John's family and some survivors leave on the bus towards the crater. However, the trip is interrupted when something explodes on the road. Suddenly, the bus is surrounded by insurgents. A soldier steps out to fight them but is immediately shot down. Then an insurgent kills the driver as well and forces all the refugees out of the bus. John orders his family out but stays behind to tackle the insurgent and start a fight. Another armed man tries to help his partner, but a refugee knocks him down with a rock to the head. Inside the bus, 2 shots are heard. John emerges victorious with a gun but reveals he was shot. Everyone boards the bus again, and Nathan keeps pressure on John's wound while Allison drives. Moments later, they reach the top of a new mountain and the family helps John walk until they find the crater. The rumors are true. The crater is a beautiful place with fertile land and zero contamination, perfect for rebuilding. At that moment, John collapses and his family gathers for a final goodbye before he dies. Everyone cries while Nathan repeats his father's prayers, ending like this. Greenland 2 sci-fi thriller movie from 2026. And I will see you in the next video.